Hi everyone, my name is Michael and I'm a software developer at Paessler and working on the Paessler PRTG Data Hub. Today we have a look at the forwarding use case of the Data Hub, which is a network message and relay application where you can also filter on different protocols, network protocols. If you need more details, have a look at our first tutorial where we already did the installation and the setup of the Data Hub. If you have more questions, we also have a quite good documentation at the manual, so have a look there. So as I said, we are going to look at the forwarding use case. The first use case, we are going to talk about 5 use cases today, so they build upon each other. So the first one we have to look at is forwarding Syslog messages from multiple devices to PRTG. And for that, we need to go and dive into the configuration of the Data Hub. And what I can say here is use any IDE that supports JSON schema, because with JSON schema support it makes it so much easier to write those rules and configurations and already have some syntax highlighting. So yeah, just use that. I use Visual Studio Code in that case, in that regard, because it's my day-to-day editor. For that, I already have the rule set schema already provided. Also comes with the installation of the PRTG Data Hub, and you can also via command line print that one out and move it to any direction where you want to edit files. So with that said, we start with the first rule and we call it Syslog to PRTG. All configuration files are in YAML. You can also use JSON if you want. But for this, I'm going to do it with YAML. Okay, so the first line, I just copied that over, is we want to use the syntax highlighting I set from VS Code. And for this is the first line. I say, hey, VS Code, please use the YAML language server and look at the rule set schema file. And that's everything I need for that. Okay, first, what's our use case? We want to forward messages from Syslog, from any Syslog on this device to any destination, in our case PRTG. So we start with the receivers. We have one receiver. We call it Syslog input. And this will be of type Syslog. As you can see, I already have here a menu where you can choose which protocol I want. And I want an interface address, and I want to use the all interface wildcard. This means I will have, if I have multiple interfaces, also localhost and so on, all traffic coming in on the default port, which is 514 for Syslog, will be collected. The next step is we want to forward to PRTG, so I need a destination. I call this one PRTG, and for type we use, type, I say UDP because Syslog be a UDP. Host, we do PRTG.lan in my network, so I already have a PRTG version running in my demo environment, and I say define the default port here again because UDP doesn't know that does not have a default port, right? That's basically it. We have the receiver, the Syslog input, and we have the destinations. This is PRTG. Now we have to stick everything together. And for that we need a rule. So we call it Syslog to PRTG. We define the receiver. One rule can only have one receiver. So Syslog input, and the destination, we can have multiple destination. This is why we have this mark here on the line, and that's it. This is our first configuration that we want to deploy to our Data Hub. So let's do that. For the later use cases, I will just put everything together on the machine and set up the sensors later on, so have a look at a later chapter for that. Okay. So I'm in my folder right now, as you can see. Let's do it like this. So I copy over the rule to the Data Hub, to my home directory. with that, I will validate the rule again. Not again. I will validate it. We can use the help CLI command, and see what options we have. And we have a validate command. Perfect. I want to validate the file because it's always good to validate the file before we actually deploy it. Then I want to validate the rule set. Let's do that. Validate rule set and the file name, and it's valid. So let's copy it over. So we'll copy to our rules directory I showed you in the installation tutorial. And let's do a restart. Make the console nice again. Sudo systemctl restart Paessler Data Hub. And let's have a look now at the status. And we see it's active and running, and we started one rule. Perfect. To validate this again, we switch over to our Swagger endpoint. Again, in the first tutorial, in the installation tutorial, we created the operational user. We use it now to authorize on the endpoint and check if the rule is actually loaded. I know it is because we saw it in the logs, but this is just another way to confirm it. Perfect. Yes. So the rule is loaded now. What else do we want to do? Because it's actually PRTG is not yet listening to our forwarded syslog messages. So let's go and switch over to PRTG. So we are going to PRTG, and in the Data Hub device we create a new syslog sensor on the Data Hub device, and this will be a syslog receiver. Syslog receiver for, let's call it 1, because it's the first tutorial, and we forwarded on our default port, which is 514, and we just created and don't have anything special. Let's see if we receive any messages. Not yet. I think we need a scan now for that. Let's do a refresh. No messages yet. Okay, so we created the syslog receiver, and it's not showing anything yet, but we can also confirm the metrics on the Data Hub. For that, I'm going to the endpoint again, the Swagger endpoint, use the rule name. This is Syslog PRTG, and execute it, and we see that there is already coming in traffic and going out also. Because we accept everything, we do not filter anything, so nothing is dropped or rejected. Exactly in the last bytes, or the last message was recently received. Perfect. Let's switch over to PRTG, and oh, we see it's red again, but we're getting traffic. Yes, it's a default warning, so doesn't matter in our case right now, but we get the, if you have your own metrics or thresholds where you want to have get any notifications from PRTG, you can configure it in the usual way in PRTG. For us, this is good enough because we get the data in PRTG. Okay, so let's talk about the next use cases we have. So this is just the example one. We will talk about now about how can we enhance and move forward with this. For example, we want to use Syslog TLS and also Syslog Mutual TLS. And at the end, I want to show you how you can forward enterprise SNMP traps. So let's dive in. We create a new file for that one. And that will be number 2. Let's do syslog to syslog TLS. Also YAML file. To make it easy again, I copy over some parts of it. And we can use the receiver as well in our case. Right now we need a new destination. PRTG does not support Syslog TLS input right now, so we define a new one, our Syslog. I'm using our Syslog for this one. You can use any tool out there that supports Syslog via TLS. Also notice that I created the certificates. Before that, you should have a certificate infrastructure in your environment to use valid certificates. Of course, you can use self-signed ones like I do, but it's not recommended for production usage. What I'm talking, this is type, it's not rsyslog, it's Syslog again. Host will be rsyslog. Port this time will be a different one because we're using the default TLS one. This is 6514. And for this we use transport. As you can see, it's by default set to UDP. We want to have TLS right now, and TLS does not support spoofing because that's against certificates and stuff, so we have to define a root certificate file where we can authenticate the sending endpoint for. And for this, I already put the files into the certificate store on the installation system. So I just have to put in the path for that certificate store. So own certs, and that's the root file exactly. If we have this, again, just stick everything together, use a syslog to TLS this time, use the receiver, this is the syslog input, and destination, we use our new rsyslog destination. Perfect. Let's call it a little bit different. Let's call it syslog in. Perfect. Okay, so we have this one. I will show you later the configuration in PRTG, how you can monitor metrics on that rule. We just so have a look there and jump to that chapter, and here we continue with our next rule, which will be mutual TLS. For that, you can also add a new destination in this file. I will create a new file to keep everything clean and call it syslog to syslog mtls. Also YAML again. I copy over the receiver part, and here we're going to add a new destination. This time it's called our syslog. Call it mtls, mutual TLS. Again, first the type. This will be syslog. Please forward this for me. Exactly, there is some missing things. For example, the host name. This will be our syslog again. The port this time, because it's requiring mutual TLS, so the Data Hub has to provide also a valid certificate file. We're using 7514, and as a transport, again, not UDP, TLS. That's the same. We require, we can copy that one over from our rule before. The root CA, which the receiver, so the destination will be authenticated against. But this time we also have to provide our own client certificate, which is also be issued by this root certificate, or intermediate one. And I called it client PEM, which is also located in the own directory of certs, and the private key for that one is under own private. I can show you that one later. Okay, this is the syslog use case. No, we know we have to stick everything together again, right? We need a new rule, syslog to syslog mtls, user receiver, syslog in, and the destinations, This will be the Syslog. And for whatever reason it does not format that one correctly. No, not yet. Now it does. Okay, perfect. This is the Syslog use cases. So for example, you can enhance this with any filter we have. We have text filters, IP filters, we have Syslog filters where you can filter on severity. Just have a look at the manual. There you find all explanations and examples for that. Also under the example directory I showed you in the installation tutorial, you can also see how you can configure filters. The last use case I want to show you is forwarding SNMP traps. And for that we create a new rule, the last one. And this is not Syslog, this is SNMP to PRTG. I will at least use the YAML JSON schema support again. And we are going to define this time one SNMP trap receiver. As a type, we using SNMP. Interface address, we're using all interfaces again. And this time we do a new destination and we call it PRTG again. Host will be PRTG.lan and the port will be 1162. And this time we actually want to spoof the IP, just for giggles. This is the first one. Okay. So we stick everything together in our rule for now. Over and over, the same. Yes, I know. But repetition is good sometimes. To PRTG. And now it will forward all SNMP traps. But this time I just want to, why is it highlighting this one? Missing property type. That's why it's important to have the JSON schema support. And that should be UDP. Yes. Why is it highlighting this one? It's just spelling. Okay. There's no rule name. Of course, there's an SNMP to PRTG. Perfect. Okay, we want to forward just specific traps, for example. So I can define filters. As I mentioned before, we have different filters for different protocols, for text, syslog, severities, SNMP traps types, and this is what we are going to do now. We have a look at our SNMP filters. So we only want to have specific traps. That's the name of the filter. And the type of the filter will be, as you can see, we have IP, syslog, text, and SNMP. We want to have SNMP. And the SNMP filter requires the trap OID type, which will be sent or which will be forwarded. And for that, I just copy it because OIDs. This is just an arbitrary one. Make sure you look at the vendor manual and have a look at the documentation of the machine that is sending the traps, because usually there are also in the manual there are hints on where you can find the OID or the trap OIDs, and also there are tools online where you can search and look up specific OIDs from vendors. As I said, this is just an arbitrary one for demo purposes or for this tutorial. So we need to use this filter now in our rule. And with that, the specific, if I can type, specific traps. This is already included, and only traps with this ID will be forwarded to PRTG. To make it even more fun, the trap, or as the SNMP filter, can also support looking at specific variables inside a trap. If right now only text filters or text variables, so I will just copy it over. We define a new filter type for SNMP. Again, the same trap, but this time we look inside the trap at a specific variable OID, and it should be starting with window, and if it's either capital open or small lowercase open, this trap will be forwarded. Because I want to differentiate right now which filter is hit, I will create a new rule, SNMP, let's call it SNMP window to PRTG. We type the receiver. Again, the receiver, because we defined it globally, can be used again. For the filter, this time we use the open window. And as a destination, we use PRTG again. Oh, because I want to have different, I want to show it different in PRTG, let's do a different port at the PRTG machine. Let's just do 2000 and 2162, and let's call it PRTG window. Perfect. Then we can differentiate which filter or which filter was hit and which rule. Perfect. So just to remind you, I have already set up a testing machine that sends periodically this arbitrary trap OID, also coming in regular intervals with window open and closed. So keep that in mind. You would have to adjust it to your use case. So see you when we have the filters in PRTG. Okay, we will create two sensors for the SNMP trap use case. And for that, we create the SNMP trap sensor in PRTG. You can skip this if you already know how to do it. And we use, the first one was the port 1162. And this is just SNMP specific trap. And the next one, we will create another one. Also the SNMP one, SNMP variable trap. Of course, we need the sensor first. It was already by the name of the sensor. Here, SNMP variable trap. And this was 2162. Perfect. For the other sensors, we are not sending to PRTG, we are just forwarding with the Data Hub, but we can still monitor the traffic that's going through those rules with PRTG. And for that we can add traffic sensors or rule sensors of the Data Hub. If you search for Data Hub sensors, there is the rule one. And the rule one, as you can see, has a metascan, and you can see which kind of rules we want to monitor. And that will create them automatically for you. Let's do it, and then we see after a second how much traffic is going through those rules. And I see I have a typo in there that we can fix in the meantime. So the specific one is already green. This one should come up in a minute. And here, this is the SNMP to PRTG rule also already showing messages, just not green yet. Let's refresh. This is the window use case, and those are the Syslog ones, also showing messages coming in, but are not green yet. As you can see, I created the rule sensors, which monitored the traffic going through those rules. They are all green now, so everything works as we expected. So that concludes our tutorial for this time. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If so, feel free to leave us a like and consider subscribing. If there is a topic you want us to make a tutorial about, you can tell us in the comments. If you still have questions, also leave a comment or even better, support ticket. Have a nice day and thanks for watching.